Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Tuesday, July the 7th. Overall markets currently, we are having a mini gap down on the NASDAQ. The SPY is in between its previous day's range. The SMH here is dropping down 3% in the pre-market. So the semis continue to show weakness here compared to the SPY in itself. That being said, we'll head on to the charts here in a second. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Z Norris, Andy, Bobby, Julius, Lamit. Good morning, Tony, Knight. Good morning, Austin, Francisco, Ashley, User. What's up, Robert? Good morning, Up, Lucky, Shy. What's up, everyone? B Roots, Carl, Leon. What's up, everyone? Good evening from Australia. What's up, everyone? Yeah. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Let me pull up the economic calendar here, and we'll get started. Okay, first things first, let's pull up the economic calendar here. There is a couple things to keep in mind coming into this week. At least for today, there is no red folder news, so you don't have to pay attention to that. Tomorrow, we do have FOMC minutes. That is going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then, of course, on Thursday, we do have unemployment claims. If we're taking a look at the earnings calendar here, of course, there is a couple things to keep an eye out for. Primarily, I think we had Intel. I'm not sure why it's not popping up here. I'll take a look at this more in depth, but I'm pretty sure we do have Intel earnings this week. But with that being said, let's go on to the charts to show you guys exactly what we have coming to today. Okay, first let's hop onto the SPY. So we're on the SPY daily time frame, and then we're gonna make our way down to the Qs and everything else. First things that we have to understand is that the SPY is a little bit stronger than the rest of the markets. As you can see here for the SPY, we end up gapping up, pushing up in towards our previous day highs yesterday, and now we're opening up in between its previous day's range. If we look at the QQQ, as you can see yesterday, we're in between its previous day's range, and now we're gapping down. And we're essentially filling the gap that we created all the way down and towards that 714. As for the SMH, you can see this one is in between its previous day's range. And we're now back down in towards our Friday's lows, which is at 584. All right, with that being said, let's talk about some of the levels that we have coming to market open. Let's go on to the hourly time frame. So for the SPY, the key levels that I have marked out coming into today, of course, is going to be that 750. This is a key level here on the higher time frames. You have multiple touches right at this key level. And right now you can see 750 is going to be key. If we can break above our 750, hold above that level, we can see this continue push back towards the upside. If we reject off that 750, we're just going to see this move right back down in towards this gap that we created here over the weekend. So that's the sorry, that's the key level that we have on SPY coming into today. We're just going to mark out that previous day highs, which is at 750 along with that 751. And then we're also going to mark out the area. If we can break underneath that 750, then we can see this potential flip here on the market. So that's what we have on the SPY coming into today. If we take a look at the Qs, we are currently filling the gap towards the downside here. So we do have now, it's going to be two gaps in the market. So we have a gap up, and now we're going to have a little bit of a gap down. And of course, this is the gap that we created here over the weekend, 714, that we're currently right now kind of filling towards the downside. You can see we do have multiple touches off this level. And you can see there's a little bit of reaction here in the pre-market. So coming into today, we are going to have two gaps on the chart. So that is something to keep in mind on the QQQ. The best case scenario for the Qs is Going to be that full gap fill. If we can come down, fill that gap, then we can be looking for a potential bounce opportunity off our 712. The thing about the overall markets, as I talked about, is the Qs is a little bit weaker than the SPY, and of course the SMH is a lot weaker here as well. So whenever the overall markets, the SPY's leading the markets, that is not necessarily a great sign for momentum. That means a lot of things are slowing down and there's a rotation into a couple other names. All right, if we take a look at the SMH here, let's go on to the higher time frame. So the SMH is now closing underneath key technical levels that we talked about. Let's make sure we have this loaded up here as well. Key levels that we have is, of course, our 9 and 21. If we're talking about moving averages, we are closing underneath the 9 and 21 that I talked about on Friday. And now you can see we're a lot weaker compared to the SPY, of course. So sorry, feeling a little bit under the weather this morning, so bear with me. But for the SMH coming into today, key levels that I do have marked out is going to be that 610. That was the area that I talked about yesterday, along with that 620. We did reject off a couple key levels, and now you can see we're gapping down, and we're pushing all the way back down in towards our Friday's lows here. So for the SMH, you can see now down about 2.7% here in the pre-market. This is a key technical level on the higher time frame, so we like to see a potential bounce off our 580 or now this mean reversion off our previous day lows. For on the hourly time frame, you can see we did reject off key technical levels, which happens to be the 608. We can just mark out this general area we rejected. So now you can see we're continuing back towards the downside. If you do want to see any sort of longs, we need it back above the 610 for any sort of continued push back towards upside. So really, as we talked about earlier, SMH, there's quite a bit of divergence in the market. That's why it's a little bit more trickier to trade the past week or so, because SPY's leading, Q's inside the middle of the range, and then the SMH, of course, is at the low of the range, which makes it a lot more difficult, especially since the semis have been the ones that are leading the markets higher the past really 6 months. So this is the first sign where there's a little bit of divergence here on the higher time frames. All right, now I'm going to go on to some tech names that I have coming into today, starting off with Tesla, and then we're going to make our way down onto a few other names now here as well. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below here as well. So looking at Tesla, not really too much to talk about on the daily chart. On the hourly time frame, the key levels that we have marked out yesterday, of course, was our 400 along with our 412. Key levels that we have marked out is that 400. We talked about the potential pop and fade yesterday for a push back down towards the lows. Or if we can get above, now it's going to be that 400. We can see a potential flip back towards the upside. So for Tesla, this one is kind of just more so ranging. We're just rejecting off key levels, bouncing off key levels of support. Very hard to kind of determine a clear direction. It's more so just based off intraday price action. So for Tesla, key levels that I do have marked out is this 412, a potential hold of this 412 for a move back towards the upside is in play. Of course, if we reject, now you can see this flip right back down in towards that 400. So for Tesla, as I mentioned, we're just going to keep an eye out on the intraday price action. Within the first like 10 to 15 minutes is going to be key on this name. All right, let's take a look at Nvidia next. This one is well now underneath the EMAs, underneath the 9, underneath the 21. This one showing a lot more weakness. Each pop is currently being shorted towards the downside on Nvidia. Sorry, if you look at this one on the higher time frames and we have the levels pulled up, what are some of the levels that we have marked out? Some of the levels that we do have marked out here is our 200 key psych. And as you can see, we're rejecting off this one on the higher time frames. Other levels that we have marked out as well is our 197. Currently, we are back down in towards our key level support, which happens to be our 192. You can see we went from our 200 down in towards our key level support, which is our 192. Now what we like to see coming into today is the potential bounce play off our 192 for a pushback towards the upside. If we get underneath that 192, then we can see a potential flip here in the markets. All right, let's take a look at AMD next. So AMD showed pretty strong price action above our previous day highs. This one had a nice push towards the upside as well, but ultimately was not able to close above key technical levels. And if you're looking at this one on the daily chart, we weren't able to close above that 560 here as well. So for AMD, the key levels that we have marked out is this kind of range that we're still technically in. And see, we had a nice bounce on Friday, yesterday. Nice push towards the upside. Ultimately was not able to close above. And now you can see we're back in the range here as well. So for AMD, what are some of the levels that we have coming into today? So some of the levels that we have marked out is, of course, that 560, which you can see we tried breaking above and holding. And then ultimately we flipped and then we end up rejecting. Now we're back down at our previous day lows here, of course. So for AMD, really not too much to talk about here today. The best chart to look at this one is the best chart to look at this one is, of course, the hourly time frame. The hourly time frame is ranging. So if we're going to reject off our 560, right now our bottom of the range is our 500 here, of course. So we could see a potential retracement all the way back down in towards our 510 here on the higher time frames on AMD. So until we break outside this range, I'd be a little bit more cautious on this name. As for Apple, this one, we talked about looking really strong on the higher time frames for a pushback up in towards our all-time highs. Currently Apple is back at our all-time highs key level. So what we have marked out is our 316. So we talked about that potential move up in towards that area. If you look at this one on the hourly time frame, currently having a little bit of reaction or currently pushing up in towards that 316 here on the higher time frame. So for Apple, as you can see, this one ended up having a nice push above our previous day highs yesterday. So nice push, and then now you can see continuation back up in towards that all-time highs. Now the key levels that we have marked out is our 314. So maintain above that 314, continuation up in towards our all-time highs here is in play. Which is, but yeah, basically back up in towards that 316. This one is one of the more bullish names on the higher time frames. Really one of the only tickers that is above the 9, above the 21, and closer to, of course, that all-time highs. Google's starting to flip here as well. Key levels is our 350. We're kind of forming this head and shoulders, or sorry, inverse head and shoulders on the higher time frames. We're kind of creating this right shoulder here now. What I would like to see is this flip and now a push back towards the upside. If we can get back above 370, we can see a nice push higher. As for a few other tickers here, Microsoft, we're bouncing off our 350 here on the higher time frames. We're going to get that push back up and towards our 400. Kind of this like mini V-shaped recovery that we had. Key levels that we have marked out next If we go on to the lower time frames, and the levels that we have marked out is just going to be this 400. So we would like to see that trade up and towards this area here on Microsoft. As for Meta, this one's consolidating after we had some news last Wednesday. Sorry, Amazon a little bit more consolidation. Netflix similar to kind of like SpaceX here as well. These ones aren't doing as much. So the main names that are continuing towards the upside, at least on the higher time frames wise, is Apple, of course. AMD had a nice move yesterday, but ultimately rejected off the top of the range. And then for Tesla, this one, a lot of range in the markets. The reason being is because we talked about the SPY. SPY is closer to the top of the range, while Qs is a lot weaker, and the SMH here as well. So with that being said, kind of the same game plan coming into today as before. You just want to be a little bit more patient. We'll talk about the future charts here real quick, and then we'll head on to a couple other tickers here now as well. So if you guys do have any charts or any tickers, as I mentioned, you guys can drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below as well. All right, let's take a look at the NASDAQ here, and then we'll take a look at ES and make our way down. So for the levels that I have on the NASDAQ today, we just have a couple key technical levels, 29,600. We have our 29,300. And then we have our 30,000, which we're currently rejecting off of. So for NQ, if we want to see a potential move back down in towards our previous day lows here and below, sorry, we're underneath our previous day lows. We want to see a push down in towards our Friday's lows of last week. Underneath 29,500, push towards the downside. If we maintain above this 29,500, we can see a potential mean reversion back towards the upside. If you look at the ES, this one is a lot stronger, as I mentioned. So for the ES key levels that I have marked out is going to be our 7,500. The break above hold, continuation up and towards the upside here is in play. If we reject, we can see a potential push right back towards the downside here for the higher time frames. Let's take a look at some of the other names that we have now as well, starting off with Palantir. This one is building up higher lows here on the hourly time frame. We talked about the base above our 128 yesterday. Nice push up in towards our previous day highs earlier into the morning, and now you can see we're having some nice continuation in the pre-market. So key levels that we have marked out 133. Let's keep an eye out on Palantir above our 133 for continuation towards the upside, above our pre-market highs here as well for a push higher. As for MU, this one is a little bit weaker. We're underneath the 9, we're underneath the 21 we talked about on the daily time frame. This one showing a little bit of momentum, or sorry, we're starting to lose momentum on the higher time frames because we finally closed underneath our first close underneath our 9 and 21 on the daily time frame, and now you can see momentum is slowing down on MU. Key levels that I have on MU is now going to be number one are they're 960. We also rejected off a very key technical level. If you kind of just draw out this area, you can see level of support turn into resistance, and we end up fading and rejecting, and now we're going to be right back down in towards this 900. That's really the next key technical level on MU. Let's go on to a few other tickers here. As SNDK, very similar thesis compared to MU. They're all within the same sector. First close underneath that 9 and 21, and now you can see a little bit more weakness. As I was saying, the first close underneath the 9 and 21, and now we're showing a lot more weakness here on the daily chart. As for INTC, this one trying to close underneath the 9 and 21 here. If we're looking at this one on the hourly time frame, this one's still holding up, but with the overall market showing a little bit more weakness. For INTC, we are rejecting right off a key technical level, which happens to be that 125, and now we're pushing right back down in towards that 117. Now what we're going to have marked out is, of course, going to be our last week's lows. You can see multiple touches off this key level support. We can get rid of this. Right now, what we can have marked out is going to be our last week's lows and that 118. If we maintain underneath 118, we can see a potential flip here today for a pushback towards the downside. If we reclaim back above, we can see this potential reversal. But let's keep an eye on INTC 118, WDC here as WDC here as well. Coming back down in towards key technical levels, breaking underneath that 600. This one's coming back down in towards that 520 here as well. What I like to see on WDC is the bounce play here off that 520, which currently is happening. At least yesterday, we ended up having a nice bounce off that level. Now today we are rejecting once again off that 600, and we're moving back towards the downside. So we like to see a potential bounce for a pushback towards the highs. As for a couple other tickers here, we have like MBIS, we have Marvel here as well. But a lot of these ones are, of course, pulling back with the broader indices as well. So even the names that were showing a lot more strength are now pulling back. So they are going to be, they are going to come back into key technical areas. If now we're breaking underneath the 9 and 21 on most of these names, you do want to be a little bit more cautious. At least for momentum wise. That doesn't mean we're not going to have any trends whatsoever, but that just means the momentum slowing down on the higher time frame. So you want to be a little bit more cautious, and you don't want to try and hold for a multi-day continuation. So with that being said, let's go on to the game plan for today very briefly, and then I'm going to get ready for market open here. So coming into today, overall, the markets, the key levels that we do have marked out is, of course, just going to be that pre-market low along with our previous day close here from Friday. So this is exact level we can have marked out 714. Let's keep an eye on the reaction that we have off our 714. If we maintain above that 714, continuation back up and towards that previous day highs here and above, there's a possibility we could see a potential previous day low rejection. A pop and fade here is in play. So if market pops up, we can be looking, for a fade back towards the downside. As for the SPY, key levels that we're going to have marked out here is going to be, of course, our 751. 751 is our high that we created from last week. If you just mark this out, these are the key levels that we have marked out. Potential pop and fade, push towards the downside. Or now if we flip back above, we can see this potential move back up in towards our previous day highs here. So for the overall markets, SPYs, of course, leading the markets higher. We'll keep an eye on our 751. Qs is a little bit weaker underneath our previous day lows. A lot of divergence, as I mentioned, in the SMH well underneath our previous day lows, back down in towards our Thursday's lows of last week. So with that being said, at least for today, I'm going to be a little bit more patient. Some of the names I'm watching, Tesla above our 415, Tesla also above our previous day highs here is in play as well. Some other names, a potential NVIDIA support bounce off our 192, or NVIDIA underneath now our 192 for potential flip here on the higher time frames. AMD, not that interested after now opening up closer to that previous day lows. Apple, something I'm going to keep an eye out on. Just more so on the daily time frame. We already had such a big move, now back up in towards our previous day high. So I do expect some sellers to step in here today, right off our previous all-time high. So for Apple, we're just going to keep an eye out on our previous day highs. As for everything else, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more patient in the markets. Last week, kind of similar game plan, was a little bit more patient. This week, similar thing here as well, just because we have a lot more divergence with a lot of these names, like a MU, or the names that we were focusing on, even like Palantir and like Hood. These ones are still holding up. a little bit stronger compared to the rest of the market. So if you do want to continue looking for upside, we can keep an eye on Hood and Palantir. As for everything else, as I mentioned, just going to be a lot more cautious on like some of the semiconductors. We can be looking for potential shorting opportunities if we do want to continue to show weakness on MU, SNDK, INTC, especially if the SMH is going to continue to show weakness underneath our Thursday's lows of last week. But yeah, with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Sorry, I was a little bit under the weather, as I mentioned. Hopefully I'll feel better within the next few days. Gonna get a lot more rest. And with that being said, I'm gonna call it a session here, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. Peace.